Hi everyone, I'm Genesis and I'm going to show you how to create your own chat dapp using Moralis. And today's gonna be different because we're doing it in mobile using React Native. So here's the application we're going to build. I'm currently running this on Android. You can see that we can log in, view messages, send messages, and an animation that shows whenever a user is typing. We're gonna be using this Ethereum React Native boilerplate that Moralis already prepared for us. So this is the GitHub link. So if you're a hybrid mobile app developer, I highly recommend using this repo to create your own mobile dapps. We are going to use Moralis in building this application, the best full stack Web3 framework. It's like the Firebase for crypto that will literally cut down your development time by 90%. And is the best pick for these kinds of applications. So to start the development of our chat dapp, all you have to do is to go to the Ethereum React Native boilerplate that I've shown you earlier, clone the repo in your local folder. So after you clone the repo, go to the folder where you cloned it. So here's mine. Open your terminal and type in yarn install. So I already did that earlier. All I have to do right now is to type in yarn Android since I'm using my Android phone. So you can also use your iPhone or your iOS simulator if it's already set up on your machine. Do yarn iOS and it will do the thing for you. So in my case, we type in yarn Android. We hit return or enter, and it's now running. Let's just wait a bit till all the process is up already. So here's the bundler opening up. And as you can see, I already run the application on my phone. So it's already showing up here. So what it's going to do, it's going to connect this application that we have on the phone in this bundler here. So as you can see, it's still loading. And when it's done, it will be connected directly to the mobile phone that we're using to display the app here. So now our application is already connected to the bundler. And the next thing we have to do is to connect our application to the server. So how we do that is we go here in the providers.tsx. And we're going to see here a Moralis provider component. And it's asking for an app ID and a server URL that we can find in the Moralis server. So here we can see here the application that we're running. It is called React Native Chat App and it's running on testnet. So when we view the details, we can see here the server URL. So we copy it. So I already did that. So here it is, the server URL and the application ID, which is here. So this way we will be able to connect our application to the Moralis server. So after we modify the providers.tsx file, the next thing we have to do is to go to the app.tsx file and modify it like what I have here. So you can find the link in the description below for the repository so you can follow through. So the next we have to do is to go to cryptoauth.js file. And as you can see here, we have a function that is called handle crypto login. And what I did here is I just replaced this line of code here with the screen in where we're going to be putting our chat functionality, which is home. And I just created here a use effect function that is called whenever the user is authenticated, we're just going to redirect the user to the home screen. So after everything is set up, the next thing we have to do is to log into the app. And how we do that is we just click on crypto wallet login and it's going to redirect us to the MetaMask application. We just have to wait for a bit for it to open. All right, so it's now loading. All right, so we can now see the wallet and it prompts us to connect our application to the MetaMask app. So we just have to click on connect. And then there's another pop-up. And we just have to click on sign. And there you go. We're already logged into the application. So if you go back here, you can see that we're already redirected to the home screen, which is the chat screen. And currently it's empty. And I'm going to show you step by step how to send messages, display messages, and subscribe to upcoming messages, and also the typing functionality that I've shown you earlier. So as you can see, we have here the chat dapp open, but it's currently empty. We already have here a text input, an emoji selector button, and a send message button. So I'm going to show you step by step on how to make them work. So let's go to the chat.js file. So as you can see, we have here the chat component open, and we have a text input here that corresponds to the text input that we have in the app here. And every time the user types in this text input, we are catching the text here in the onChange text function that we have, and we are now passing that value to a function that is called setMessage. This is actually changing the state here, or the message state, that we are going to pass later on to the database. So before we can actually send a message here, we just need to set up our server for us to be able to store all our messages to the database. And how we do that is we go here to our Moralis server, and once we click on dashboard, we'll be able to go to the Moralis dashboard screen. So let's just wait till it loads. All right, so here we can create a class. So you can type in the name of the class you want here, but I already have it, and it is called messages. So when we click on messages, I have two fields that I declared, which is the message and the user ID. So whenever the user types in a message, I'm storing it here in this column, in the message column, and the user ID is stored here in the user ID column. So going back to the code here, now we can actually send a message to our database. And how we do that is just we call this function in Moralis. So we're going to be saying use Moralis, and then we deconstruct the Moralis function. And then we say Moralis.object. And then we're going to be putting here the name of the class in where we're going to be storing our messages. And then after that, we're just going to be passing this function to this variable here that is called new message. So here in the send message function, we can see a couple of lines of codes that are commented. So if we uncomment this, you can now see the new message function that we declared earlier, and we are calling an array function here that is called set, and we're passing two parameters. The first parameter is the name of the column, and the second parameter here is the actual value we wish to put here in this column. So that goes with the message as well, and we just call this save function after declaring all that we wanted to save in the database. So we just say a new message, that's save, and that's it. So by the way, what is this current user ID here? So if you go back here at top, you can see that this is actually the ID of the current user that is logged in, and I'm accessing it here through the use Moralis function. So now let's try to actually send here a message to our database. So we go here to the app and try to type in a test message. So let's say we type in test 10, and then we click on send. So as you can see here, it seemed that nothing really happened, but let's go here to the Moralis server. So here in the messages, we click on messages and we look for our message here. So it says test 10. So all right, so I guess this is it, since the created date is November 26, and this is my time here. So test 10, let's try to send another one. So let's go to the app. Let's say test 100 or test 1000. Let's try to send this. All right, so let's go to the database again, and let's try to refresh this. And there you go. Now you can see the new message is already being stored to the database. So now that we are able to see that the messages are being stored to the database, the next thing we have to do is to display those messages in the app. So before we do that, we have to create a Moralis Cloud function. So let's go to the dashboard and click on Cloud Functions. And here you can see a cloud function that I defined earlier. So I just say moralis.cloud.define and then the name of the function that I wish to identify, which I just say get all messages. And I am getting all the messages inside the messages class, and then I store it in the query variable, and the result is being stored to the result variable here. And I also do that for the user. I'm getting all the users in the user table and store it in the user query, and the end result will be stored here in the user result. And here in this next lines of codes here, we're actually just doing a loop here. So I just declare a messages variable, and the result here, which is the result of the messages, is being mapped. And we also map here the user result, which is the result of the user table. We map it together and we compare by doing this. We say the data of the message that attributes that user ID, if it's equal to res.id, which is res is the item of the user. So let's say it corresponds to if data that attributes that user is equal to user.id. Now we're going to be returning here a new object. So the new object will consist of the data of the message, and then the user ID, which comes from the user table, the username, ETH address, and profile picture. But right now we're not returning the profile picture since we're not going to implement this, but you can definitely do this on your own dapp for you to personalize. And at the end of the function, we're just calling here a filter function for us to just make sure that there won't be no null values to be returned here. So after that, this messages variable here will be returned here at the end of the function, and we just have to click on save. So it's currently saving, and all right, it's already saved. So if we go back here to the code, now we can go ahead and display these messages. So we have here the function that we're going to be using for us to be able to fetch those messages. So it is called get all message, and what it's actually doing is, all right, let's try to uncomment this. So what it's actually doing is it is calling the Moralis cloud function get all messages that we just did. So we say moralis.cloud.run, and whenever this function runs, we're going to be storing the result here and set this result to a state which is called messages, and we just call it by its function name, which is set messages here. So this is it. And now all the messages and user data that we mapped in the Moralis cloud function is being stored here in this messages state here. So by the way, where is this being called? So okay, let's see, messages. All right, messages. Okay, so it is actually being called here in this part of the code. So let's try to uncomment this. All right, so uncomment. All right, so if I uncomment this, it's going to be refreshing, and there you go. You can now see all the messages from the messages class in the Moralis database that we've created. So here is the messages that we just sent, test 10 and test 1000. So there you go. Now you can see all the messages being displayed in the app. I think the next best thing to do is to, well, do the animation part. So whenever a user types in and send a message to our application, we're going to be populating that message here in this scroll view. So it will act like a real-time messaging. So we're going to be creating a subscribe function here so that whenever a user sends a message and store it into the database, we're going to be updating all the messages here that you can see in the app in real time. So how we do that is just we call here a subscribe function that we defined before. So it is actually called the subscribe to messages function, and inside it we have commented lines of codes here. So these codes, this will actually subscribe us to the messages class in the Moralis database that we've created. So how we do that is just we call new Moralis.query and then the name of the class, which is the messages, and then we store it to the query variable. And then that query variable, we're going to be accessing a function that is called subscribe. So this subscribe function here is the most important part of this subscribe feature that we're developing. So don't forget to include this and then store it into a variable that is called subscription. And then here, now we can access a function that is called on, and then it has two parameters here. The first parameter is the name of the event, which now I'm just going to call the create event. And whenever there is a message being stored to the database, we are calling this callback function here that is called notify on create. And then we're going to be passing the function that we got from this one as a result and store it into the set updated state function that we have here. And whenever this set updated function updates, this updated state here also updates, and we're going to be using it to update our component. So as you can see, we do have a couple of use effects here. And the first use effect we're using is for subscribe to messages. The second one will be for subscribe to typing function, which I'm going to show you later on. The third one is for set messages. And the fourth one will be for get all messages. And these two use effects here are dependent on the updated state. So now let's try to actually send a message and see if our subscription is working. So what to expect here is whenever I click on send, it will update here all the list of chats, including the new one that I just sent. And the text input here will be emptied. So let's go to the app and try to do that. So let's say test 2000 and we click on send. So right, there you go. So now we can see that the message is being sent to the server, and we can also see that the message is updating in real time, and we can confirm that our subscribe function is now working. So as you can see here, we do have another phone open, and that is for the purpose of me showing you another cool feature that I implemented with this dapp that will allow users to see another user typing in real time. So for us to implement this, we just have to go here to the Moralis dashboard again. And as you can see, I created another class that is called user typing. So in this class called user typing, I just created two columns. The first one is the user ID, where we store the user ID of the one typing and the status if the user is typing or not. And we should go back here to our Moralis cloud functions and create another cloud function here. So basically, we just rename this cloud function to get typing user. And like what we did earlier here at top, we just create a function and we're calling here a class, which is the user typing class that we saw earlier, and we just store it in a query variable. And in this query variable, we're just going to compare it to parameter here that we're going to be getting to later on, which is the user ID parameter. So basically, we are passing a user ID parameter in this cloud function, and we're checking if that user ID is equal to the user ID of the one that is typing. And if there is a result or not, we're just going to return this result object here. So if we click save, all right, it's going to be saving. And if we go back here in the source code, so we have here a subscribe to typing function. And what this function actually does is just check if there is another user being inserted to the user typing class we created earlier. And if there is, we're going to be calling back this notify on type function here. And if it just updated the status of the user, if the user is typing or not, still we're going to be calling this function. And this function will have a result here. And this result here will be now stored in this other user typing state here. So let's go back here in the onChangeText function. And as you can see, we do have here a type function that is still commented. So let's uncomment this one. And we can see that this type function is actually receiving a parameter, and we're just passing the current user ID parameter here in the type function. So let's uncomment this code block here. So what this basically does is, again, calling here another cloud function, which we declared earlier, and it is called getTypingUser, and we are passing this current user ID here as a parameter. And if there is a result, we're just going to update that field is typing to true. And if there is no user corresponding to that user ID, we're going to be creating that user, and we're automatically setting the is typing to true. And then we just save it like this here. So we do have here a stop typing function, and it's also using the other user typing state. And what this function actually does, it's checking if other user typing is not empty, and other user typing that attributes that is typing is true. And if it is true, we're going to be setting the value to false and then saving it. So where do we actually call this one? So this stop typing function is being called here inside this use effect. So whenever someone is typing, we're going to be calling this set timeout function here, and we're going to call the stop typing every 5 seconds. So that will give the user time to type, and then whenever the user stops typing, we're going to set the status of typing to false. So let's go to the return function here that is actually using the other user typing state. So okay, let's go down here. Let's just move the editor here a bit so we can see. All right, so okay, here it is. So we just check if other user typing is not empty, and if other user typing that attributes that is typing is true, and if other user that typing that attributes is not equal to the current user ID. And if this statement returns true, we're going to be rendering this animation here. So as you can see, this is an image that consists of the supposed to be user profile picture, and this Lottie view here is the actual animation that we're going to see when the user types. All right, so let's see this live in the application. So I'm just gonna move here my editor a bit so we can see both of phones. All right, so here on the first phone, I'm going to be typing test 3000. All right, there you go. You can see now that there is someone on the other end typing. And now let's try to send this. There you go. You can see also on the other end that the message is updating in real time. So let's try to do some reply here. Let's say test 4000. And now you can see on the other phone that we're also showing the typing animation. And when we click on send here, all right, it's sent, and we can now see that all the messages are being sent and being received in real time, including the animation. So that's it. If you need help with the code, you can post it in Moralis forum here. The code is published on GitHub, and the link is in the description below. So if you learned something from this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to this channel to learn more about Moralis. Have a great day.